Hey, glad to see you on this video. This time we're going to talk about openings. It's going to be the first of a lot of lessons. We're going to see a wide range of openings in this series of videos. Our first video will be about a few generic principles and also the bishop's opening. Let's start. So first, to make a transition with my previous tutorials, I want to remind you some very important facts about openings. The things you should always care about are space, so control the center, material, develop your pieces, and in particular the knight and the bishop, and time, in short, put your king in a safe place as fast as possible. So all the openings we will study in the next 30 or 40 videos are meeting those objectives. Even if each opening has a different strategy, you can see that all of them in their own way manage to address this space, material and time issue. So in these videos we'll see first the moves that constitute the opening, we'll show the ID, then we will detail the main variations and we'll focus on a given line that we'll study until the 8th or 10th move, depending on the opening. And at the end of this line, we will explain the strategic IDs for both sides. So again, in this video, the goal is not to study all the possible lines in an opening, because this is not possible, but to see the strategic IDs, things that you can use in your own games. And before starting, I want to make a very important point. So if you are a beginner or an intermediate player, you should never study huge lines of 15 or 20 moves without understanding the IDs behind those lines. Because as soon as your opponent will deviate from those lines, you will be completely lost. That's why it's very important to understand the IDs behind the openings rather than the moves themselves. And that's what I want to do in this video and the following ones. Okay, enough talking, we're going to study the bishop's opening, which is a very quiet and old-fashioned opening, nevertheless very interesting one. So it starts with e4 and black replies symmetrically with e5. This is what we call an open game. All games starting with e4, e5 are open games. And then bishop c4, so white chooses to develop the bishop first, and that's what constitutes the bishop's opening. So what can we say here? White has moved the bishop to c4, and the obvious idea is to attack the pawn on f7. Potentially white can reinforce this threat later on with a queen on h5, or maybe a knight that will go from f3 to g5 to target f7. But on the other hand, these threats against f7 are quite easily handled by black, to be honest. So black's idea will be to focus on the center, and the center was maybe a bit neglected by white with their last move. So now a possible line. Remember that there are many other possibilities, but a very typical line of the bishop opening is the following one. Knight to f6, and this move gives black a good position already because it is targeting the e4 pawn, as you can see here. d3, white protects, and this is the best way to defend the pawn. If white wants to sacrifice and continue attacking, then they can play knight to f3, but this is a risky game and in general completely different ideas. c6, so now with this bishop in c4, black wants to prepare a strong pawn center with c6 and then the other pawn on d5. Knight to f3, which makes perfect sense. The knight is now attacking the pawn on e5. Black has to be careful. And black plays nevertheless d5, which is an excellent move. So before protecting the e5 pawn, black can strengthen the center. And the tactical idea is that, of course, the c4 bishop here is under attack, and white needs to address this before thinking about capturing the pawn on e5. So bishop b3, which is better than exchanging the pawns in d5, which would give black a very strong center. It's black's turn to play. How can we assess this position? So first, black can certainly be happy because there is a strong pawn center here, controlling many important squares. Also, the bishops will be easily developed. For the black squared bishop, it will be on d6, c5, or b4. The light square bishop will probably land on g4 in the end. Now, if we look at it from white's point of view, things have not gone too bad either. The center is small but solid, and more importantly, those two white pawns are not blocking the bishop because the bishop had the time to go out before. So we guess that the next moves will be probably something like knight to c3 and the bishop going to g5 and castling probably. Also, white's pieces are active. The knight and the bishop are well placed and they target important squares like e5 and d5, as you can see here. Now, if we try to have a look to what can be played here, black can decide to defend the e5 pawn with the bishop on d6. That's a possibility. Or black can also decide to take action on the queen side with a5 to put a threat on the b3 bishop, and then bishop to b4, and then later exchange on c3. So from this position, white mostly has to care about finishing the development, play knight to c3, especially if black plays a5, and castle. And a crucial point is also how to solve this tension in the middle of the board, here between e4 and d5. So black wants to take on e4 to dislocate white's pawn structure. But this is maybe dangerous before castling. So as soon as this move, d takes e4, becomes possible for black, white should probably take on d5. So it's not so quiet. It's very interesting and more or less equal chances. And that's it with the bishop's opening. Hope you've enjoyed it. The next video will be about the Vienna game and the 4 knights game. See you there. Bye bye.